Welcome to the Two-Man Power Trip of Wrestling. I'm your host, JP. Jon Poz with me today. Two very special guests. The King of Connecticut himself, the King, Matthew King, if you will, and the living legend of wrestling, Larry Zbyszko. What's going on, fellas? How you doing?
Well, I'm doing great, and I'm dying to talk about Shoot Pro because I'm really excited about it. So I can't wait to get into it, and I can't wait for it to start. And the competition is going to be amazing, and I think the audience is going to realize that Shoot Pro, submission wrestling is really the resurrection of an ancient sport, thousands of years old, back from the ancient Egyptians. And it was a big sport in the ancient Roman Empire. And it was the Romans who turned it into a real physically brutal, bone-breaking, break your neck, sleep, or pop your knee. I mean, it was a science of human anatomy and an art of how to get the guys in the right position to take them down and the proper grips to use the anatomy so you can't break a hold. So it's really interesting and really the resurrection of a long-lost, sport.
It's a game of human chess, as
Yes,
some
it is, John.
genius used to say. Yes. I love that line. Hey, and King, I know you wanted to start it off with maybe a little bit of a fable.
Yeah, being St. Patrick's Day, I just wanted to start out with a little icebreaker. The story of Sheamus, not the Sheamus from the wrestling world, but the Sheamus who worked at the pickler factory, who, like many immigrants, come from Ireland. And he got a job at the pickle factory. He was sweeping the floors. And he worked his way up to be area supervisor at the pickle factory. And then one day he come home to his dear wife, Margaret, and he said, "Margaret, I have terrible news. I lost my job at the pickle factory." And Margaret said, "Sheamus, whatever will we do? Whatever will we do? How did this atrocity happen, Sheamus?" And Sheamus said, Margaret, I get caught with me wee willie in the pickle slicer." And Margaret, she said, "Oh, Sheamus, you got caught with your wee willie in the pickle slicer. That's horrible, horrible." She said, "Sheamus, whatever happened to the pickle slicer?" And Sheamus, he said, "They fired her too."
Nice.
Just a little icebreaker. But yeah, Shoot Pro, we are so excited to have the living legend, Larry Zbyszko, on board. We were just in Las Vegas for a great event called CatchCon. And Larry and I call the matches for these tournaments. There were two different weight class tournaments, an under 80 kilogram and an over 80 kilogram. And we had some real top-notch athletes from the amateur wrestling mat, the MMA cage, and the grappling stage competing. And man, I don't want to give it away, but these were intense battles. And we actually had an AAU center, Ansiate Wrestling Center, that where we had this event, and we had Wade Chalice, who's in the Guinness Book of World Records, the King of Pins, facilitated that for us. He's been with Jake in Scientific Wrestling for many years. He was coaching. We had UFC champion Frank Shamrock, UFC champion Pat Miletich. We had Joe Malenko, Jody Simon, who a lot of folks may know, coaching, big star in pro wrestling in Japan, and the competition was fierce. And John, I know I've been on your show before with Pat Miletich, promoting the event we had in South Dakota with the UFC Hall of Famer Pat Miletich, who's still our president with Shoot Pro. But this was a little different. Out in South Dakota, our event was held in the MMA cage on an MMA show. But at this event, it was held on the wrestling mat. So we always mix it up. And these were tournaments, and there were several matches. They're actually putting the shows together into a season, and it's going to be a 6-episode season with Larry and I calling the action. And we also have Jenny Santana, Tito Santana's daughter and world jiu-jitsu champion, coming in. She's out there in Vegas, and she joined us for some of the matches. And, man, this thing was just awesome. And then there was also a tag team tournament out there in Vegas, which is wild as well, but on the mat. So, yeah, Shoot Pro, like Larry said, this is 100%, pure wrestling, submissions and pins. There are 3 5-minute periods, and it's a best of 3. And, man, the action out there in Vegas was tremendous.
Oh, yeah.
It's fantastic.
And it's pure submission rules. There's no punching, there's no kicking, there's no poking in the eye, no chairs. It's pure art and science of submission wrestling. And one-on-one, a top-notch submission wrestler will beat anybody. I don't care if you're a boxer, karate man, judo person. A submission wrestler will beat anybody one-on-one.
Oh, were you loving the action, Larry? Did you like what you were seeing?
Yeah, there was some fantastic moves. I mean, one guy, he jumped up and put a figure 4 on in midair. And I mean, you have to see it to believe it, because it's something you don't see on television anymore. You see a lot of running around and flipping off the ropes and crashing through tables, but this is real break your bone off to the emergency room you can go. It's really the resurrection of an ancient sport. A true submission wrestling, again, no punches, no kicks. It's a pure art and science of the art of having someone getting in a position you can use to get them down or hook them. And then the science of anatomy of how to break an elbow, pop a shoulder hard, put someone to sleep, pop a knee out. Just brutal. I mean, people are going to be amazed and I think really surprised when they see what this is. It's really a true art. I mean, it's going to be good. I'm excited about it.
King, were you enjoying the action? Are we seeing like the best of the best, or are you guys constantly recruiting?
Yeah, we're constantly recruiting. We had some young ladies there at our event in Vegas that were from the Ultimate Fighter. One was currently with the UFC, and they were wanting to know, when are we going to start doing women's Shoot Pro? And we have an announcement to make. We don't have a date yet, but we're going to be doing a tournament in Vegas coming up. Now, bear in mind that the event we just had, Vegas, nets out 6 shows, so it's a whole season. We're airing on, we have a contract with Triller TV. We're airing on the Action Martial Arts, which is a really big platform for kickboxing and grappling. And we're airing on Hannibal TV. And we'd love to air here with you because you have a fantastic platform as well. But we're planning this female tournament, and it's going to be hosted by Jenny Santana. And it's going to be called the Mildred Burke Invitational Tournament. And there's a movie that just came out. And I don't say this lightly. I mean, halfway through this movie, Queen of the Ring, I knew it was the best wrestling movie I'd ever seen. By the end of this movie, I realized this was the best movie I have ever seen.
Wow.
It was tremendous. Now, I read the book by Jeff Lee, Queen of the Ring, back in 2008, because I wrote a book with one of my coaches who was world Shuto champion in Japan, Eric Paulson. We wrote a book on the history of pro wrestling coming out of the carnies, the history of grappling, the history of jiu-jitsu, how it all ties in together with Count Koma, who trained the Gracies. And when we wrote that book, I did a lot of research. Eric and I took 2 years to write that book. And during the course of that research, it was probably 2007 when I read it. I read the book, Jeff Lean's book, Queen of the Ring, and I wrote a chapter on Mildred Burke. Because she was a legendary shooter coming out at the carnivals and wrestling men for money. And then the movie all builds up to her shoot match with June Byers. So no disrespect to the current professional wrestlers, but it really, you need to be old school shooters like Larry and myself and Jake and Frank Shamrock and Jerry Briscoe and Pat, like our team, to really appreciate this movie and understand the history, because this is a shoot pro wrestling movie. So we're going to honor Mildred Burke with this tournament at the Ansiate Training Center, the AU Training Center, when we had our last event in Las Vegas, and Jenny Santana's going to host it. So, yeah, but back to your question, John. Yeah, man, we're constantly recruiting, but this tournament, oh, man, it was fantastic. You know, it was one match that just kept going into overtimes because they couldn't get the second fall. And this thing went, it was like the Iron Man, just kept going. And I mean, there were some, like Larry said, there was one guy that caught that jumping figure four, like that jumping head scissors. And there were just some amazing finishes. Yeah. But because we have the pinfall, and this is what's so important, and Larry and I have talked about this in great detail, it's different than the other grappling organizations because it forces the action. It's nonstop action. Because you can't have your blades down on the mat. You got to keep going. Now you can work off your back if you keep a blade up, but it makes it so intense. And yeah, I think you're gonna love it, John.
Top game submission is very important. Then, if you know what I mean, you don't want to have your shoulders obviously down because pinfalls count.
Yeah, there was a match years ago. Where a friend of mine who was a captain of Michigan State Spartans wrestling team, he went in world championship. They used to have the catch wrestling world championships, which are these rules. And he was their world champion. His name was Curran Jacobs. And he had a match under this rule set against a BJJ guy named Josh Rosenzweig. And Josh Rosenzweig won that match off his back because he kept his blades up, and he actually broke my buddy Curran's ribs, you know, in that match. So bottom game does work, but you have to keep a blade, you have to keep a shoulder blade off the mat. So it is truly, as Larry said, this is truly the human game of chess. You're going to see some amazing athleticism.
Do you like that, Larry, that the pinfalls also, you can't just stay on your back and you know, be a BJJ guy and kind of try to tap guys out with the triangles and stuff, right? I mean, different.
Yeah, no, you just can't stay there. And on the mat, you're pretty vulnerable too. So to lay on your back can be a vulnerable position because then your arms can get hooked and your neck can get hooked. And so, I mean, it's going to keep things going. I mean, it's so different than what people are used to, like, you know, King of the Ring in Connecticut there said, you know, I mean, what you see on TV today, you got a ring full of amazing athletes and they do their acrobatics and fly around. But this is a pure, brutal sport of, you know, a science of anatomy. And I'm telling you, it's brutal. People won't realize it until they watch it and get into it. And one of the exciting things is, you know, Matt mentioned some names of people. And right now, beginning Shoot Pro really doesn't have any big stars, like who's the champion, who's the best. So the audience is going to get a chance to watch. Okay, this guy beat this guy. Oh, no, that guy beat that guy. And down the road, okay, these guys had 3 matches. They're both undefeated for 3. Who's the best? Tune in next week. So we're going to get a chance to watch stars create themselves before our very eyes, because we really don't know who they are right now. It's brand new. And like Matt said, they're coming from UCF, from MMA, martial arts, Olympic wrestling. They're coming from all different sports. And the rules are simple. No punching, no kicking, no eye poking, pure submission wrestling. And it's brutal.
Interesting too. The tag teams. How does that work with tag teams being involved? How do you do
Well,
that?
that's something I'd bring in later, but Matt can tell you all about that stuff.
Yeah, so we should really clarify. Jake and I are working for a gentleman with this promotion named Jake Shannon. And Jake's been around forever. He's had scientific wrestling for over a quarter century, and they do a lot of the top camps. And then he's had King of Catch, the on the mat tournaments with these rules, but he created Shoot Pro to make it more exciting. And our big selling point is that when you watch the UFC, every match is the same, right? Same rules.
Yeah.
We're doing matches in the MMA cage, which we've done in South Dakota, and we're going back there again in the fall. We've done them in the ring. We had the 3 shows in Denver, and that includes rope breaks, and that's where we've had the tag teams in the past. And then on the mat with these last tournaments. So we're always mixing it up. We're always giving you something different, and the tag teams are wild. I urge people to go to shootprowrestling.com, and you can see 2 shows that we had in Denver that featured tag teams. And one of the shows that Jake put on, I wasn't at that particular one, was all tag teams. And shoot, tag team is wild. It's really wild. And I can tell you, the tag teams at this last show we just called it Vegas. Oh man, there's a surprise there that comes in, and I'll give you a little heads up. There was one match where there were 2 guys. One of them was Bulletproof Trooper, you may know from pro wrestling, who's an MMA champion, also pro wrestler, and another real big guy. Right? So Jake goes to their tag team opponents. He looks at their weight and he says, I'm going to let you have a 3rd guy, right? So it was a 3-on-2. And that match couldn't have been any more exciting. I mean, it was, I won't give away some of the stuff that happens.
You don't tell them the good part.
But yeah, you're gonna have to stay tuned for our season coming up, because man, it is wild. And and we love professional wrestling. We love the history of professional wrestling, the shoot history of professional wrestling, which is why I really urge people to go see Queen of the Ring. But also, we love all the aspects of professional wrestling. But what makes this so exciting, and you can sum it up this way with a simple quote that I know we've all heard before: reality is often stranger than fiction.
Yeah.
Very true. That is very true. Larry, you're obviously kind of a bit of a shoot background. Who's your favorite, like, pro wrestling guy that was a shooter?
Well, you know what? When I started in 1973. There wasn't really too many true shooters left. It was like an era before me. Like, I talk about Mildred Burke in the 30s. I wasn't born, 20-some years later. But there was still a guy. I met Billy Robinson. There was a guy named Jon Foley from Wigan, England, which was a big city for, submission wrestling in England, famous for that. There was an old saying, if you're a big un, you came from Wigan. But Jon Foley was kind of looked like one of the guys that came out of a circus because he wasn't a scary, big-looking guy, but he knew how to break every bone in your body. And I used to help him out by driving him around because he was getting a little older in this territory I went to. And I drive him around, and John said, well, let's get to the arena a little early, and I'll thank you for your helping me out by showing you all the hooks and how to shoot and how the guys got in. Because part of the art of this is the old shooters would set traps. One was called the sugar foot, where they'd have one leg kind of out and their hands kind of up. And then they made it look like they were open for a leg takedown, like the shooters wanted you to come in and try to take them down, because on the way down, crunch, that's when they were going to hook you, and they were ready for it. That's part of the art of it, was setting guys up. And, guy John Foley, and, I met Carl Gotch once, but he was already getting a little older, But when I kind of started, it started changing. The shooters were kind of fading into past history, and the big, giant, muscle-headed, impressive, scary guys came along at the birth of television, in the 50s and the 60s, and it was already starting to change a bit, where the shooters were starting to get lost in history a bit, and the showmen were starting to get all the, pub and the television time.
Yeah, it's so interesting because Larry's got an amazing personal history coming from the amateur wrestling mats in Pennsylvania and scholarship wrestling with Penn State, and then going into pro wrestling. He learned something that I learned. There are different types of shooters, right? There's the amateur wrestlers. Larry's father-in-law, Vern Gagne, is arguably the greatest amateur wrestler of his era. Gable Stevenson just won 3 Big Ten titles as a heavyweight. And there's only one other man that's ever done that, and that man was Vern Gagne, who was 3-time national champion, the best of the best, creme de la creme. But what Larry learned with John Foley, and what I learned with Billy Wicks, being a big, strong amateur wrestler, a lot of times it's the old catch 101, as Eric Paulson used to say to me when he tapped me out. You think you're big and strong, you could take me down. Well, before you know it, I'll scramble behind you and I've got your leg. And and I'll break your leg and you've got a tap. And Eric used to say that to me, the catch 101. And that was what I learned from Billy Wicks, the submissions. And Larry learned that from John Foley. But let's go even deeper with CatchCon, right? I did we had a media room, and I did these great sit-down interviews with Pat Miletich and Wade Chalice and Frank Shamrock, right? And Frank Shamrock's was fantastic because Frank Shamrock was a professional wrestler in Japan. And that's what he says. I was a professional wrestler. Pancras. Come to the Contender Series, 96, 97. Frank Shamrock against Olympic wrestler Dan Henderson. Frank Shamrock taps him with ease. Catch 101. Kenny Monday, Olympic gold medalist, against Matt Hume from Pancras. Matt Hume taps him easily. So the point being, there are different types of shooters. I've been involved with amateur wrestling, I've been coaching for nearly 30 years, high school wrestling. And I mentioned to Larry on another show, I used to love a move called the bow and arrow. I used to use it quite a bit, which is kind of like a stretching pin. And years back, I'm coaching in South Carolina, and this kid on my team catches the bow and arrow. And they stop the match. They say, dangerous position. the hooks, the submission holds. I mean, that's what I call pure wrestling. And it relates to the Queen of the Ring movie. Relates because in that movie, you have Martin Cove, right? I already mentioned Mildred Burke. You have Martin Cove, who everyone knows as Kreese from The Karate Kid and the Cobra Kai, right? He plays Al Haft. Al Haft was young Gotch. And one of my mentors, Billy Witt, sent me down to stay with Frankie Kane, the great Mephisto, who was an old carny shooter. Taught me some really nasty knee locks and leg locks. And he was trained by Frank Wolf, the same Frank Wolf who trained Carl Gotch. When Carl Gotch came to the United States, he had already been at the Snake Pit, and he publicly told everybody, including Jake Shannon, what I learned in the Snake Pit was nothing compared to what I learned in the U.S. and Ohio from Frank Wolf, who was an old carny shooter, trained my old coach and mentor, Frankie Kane. So again, this Shoot Pro is so cool because it's like the graph that Jake puts up on our website. We cross amateur wrestling, professional wrestling, MMA, UFC, and the submission grappling, all of those. And our team, I put our team up against anybody. The living legend, Larry Zbyszko, my broadcast partner, UFC Hall of Famer, Jerry Briscoe, our commissioner, UFC world champion, Frank Shamrock, our chairman, and UFC Hall of Famer, world champion, Pat Miletich, our president, Jake Shannon, the owner of our company, and myself. And I'm very proud and honored to be part of this team because I really think that we are the future of combat sports.
Yeah, it is because it's so different. It's so ancient, but it's so unbelievably brutal and real that when fans get into it, they're going to love it. I mean, because it's going to get to the point where it's like, God, this guy's versing this guy. Place your bets. Vegas will be betting on these guys because it's going to be that. Like I said, we don't have stars yet. They're going to make themselves before our very eyes. So it's going to be really intense to watch and pick out your favorite guy. I hope he wins. And I mean, I can't wait to do this.
Larry, will you be getting in there? Will there be a legends bracket? Will you
no,
guys
there's
have
no legends going off to the emergency room bracket. Thank you. No, I've been lucky. I don't need artificial parts. I don't need any screws in my neck. And I'm keeping it that way.
Yeah, we were talking about that with Frank Shamrock, and like he said, it's a young man's game, and we have to build these young guys, these future stars. And man, we've got you are going to love this thing, Jen. You've seen our other events. Did you get an opportunity? I know you saw our South Dakota in the cage, but did you get an opportunity to see our best of with the matches from Denver that included the tag team matches?
No, I didn't see that. No, I got to check that out.
I'm going to send you that to check out. And then this new 6-episode season that we have. Oh, man, there were so many matches. I mean, it kind of boggled the mind of how many matches there were in those tournaments because it went on and on. But now that Jake's got Eli and the team, the videographers that are putting the episodes together, and we're going to sort of emulate The Ultimate Fighter with this season. It's going to be a fairly long season, 6 episodes, hour-long episodes. I don't know how they're even going to condense it down to that, but really looking forward to getting it out there.
Changing gears just a second, because I'm very curious what Larry thinks about this. Everybody was talking about the John Cena heel turn, one of the greatest heel turns, talking about, obviously, Hogan and the NWO being the best. What about Larry Z turning on Bruno? Where does that rank? That's got to be one of the greatest heel turns of all time.
Well, for those days, it was the greatest heel turn probably ever, because back in those days, the fans were different. They believed. When Bruno got bloody and fell to the mat, people in the arena had heart attacks. Nowadays they just go, "Oh, guy fell down. How? This is awesome. This is awesome." The fans are now part of the show. But back in those days, I mean, I got shot at. I had my car smashed. I was stabbed in a riot after a show. It was a different world of fans back then. Now the fans are like one big family. They love it. The WWE is a great company, and it puts on a great show. You can sit there for 2 hours, and it's an awesome production with lighting and pyro and fireworks and music. And you got a ring full of amazing athletes, and they're running up and back and flipping and crashing through tables and all that. So it's great to kick back and watch, but the fans look at it for what it is: sports entertainment. It's not shoot sport. You know what I mean? So they're into it for what it is, a great show, but shoot pro is not a show. That's a real sport.
Yeah,
So,
and
Larry,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, so Larry Z turning on Bruno is the greatest heel turn of all time.
Probably, because the business changed right after that to where cheat sheets came out. The things are getting exposed to the fans. So it was a different world, and that was kind of like the era. Because right after me and Bruno, a year or two later, the whole business changed because of the birth of nationwide cable. The territories disappeared, were a thing of the past. Pay-per-view was invented because of nationwide cable. So everything changed right after Bruno. I mean, the Rock or Cena thing, whatever they do now, I didn't see it. I heard about it. It could have been great, but it doesn't have that people want to kill you that it had back when I turned on Bruno. It was, "Hey, John, you did a great job. Hey, Rock, you did a great job. That was great." But it's not like, "You bastard, come here, I want to stab you." It's a different world.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, Bruno Sammartino was an icon. I grew up, of course, hence the name, King of Connecticut. I grew up in Connecticut, and I've told Larry, God, my mother and even my grandmother, all the Italians knew who Bruno was. I mean, he was an icon out beyond wrestling. And I think what made that the greatest heel turn of all time was that it was the classic teacher versus student. I mean, Bruno had taken Larry in, and the teacher versus student is always the best because, the teacher can always use the old line, "I taught you everything you know, but not everything I know." And you can have so much with it. And that was really the best. And the other aspect too, what Larry's talking about with professional wrestling, and we love professional wrestling. I was a professional wrestler in the indies, for years, but I was told by, I mentioned the aforementioned Billy Wicks, was, "You tell those people there's not a damn thing you do in that ring to your opponent that you can't do to every single one of those fat slobs paying to see you." And the truth is, when Larry and I were in the ring, that was true. You watch Larry, so smooth in the ring, so many great techniques. John, I brought Phil Baroni into pro wrestling from the UFC world. I brought Stephan Bonner in. I brought Steve Volpone in. I wrestled national champion TJ Jaworski. I mean, every one of my matches was wrestling. And every one of Larry's matches, when you watch it, does not say freak show, does not say stunt show, does not say burlesque show. That marquee says wrestling. And Shoot Pro is 100% shoot. But without even having shoots in the world of pro wrestling today, they've lost the realism. And they've got to bring that back. And we're doing our thing with Shoot Pro. But I'll throw this at you, John, as the pro wrestling historian. Like, what I think they ought to bring back in the indies and even in WWE with some of the guys they have is start stretching fans again. Have them sign the waiver, get in the ring, and stretch the fans and make people believe, because people want to believe.
Yeah, they do. They want to believe. They want to pretend. Make it easy to pretend in. And you got a lot of tough guys in professional wrestling who are tough guys. Look at Brock Lesnar. Just one example. Kurt Angle and some others.
Jerry Briscoe made a whole career. Our commissioner was Shoot Pro of going. That's how I met Jerry Briscoe. He was recruiting a kid that I was coaching, Tim Dudley, that went on to Nebraska. Went 2 points away from being national champion. It looked like The Rock. But that's all that Jerry did. I was going out to those tournaments and recruiting wrestlers. And that's what we're doing with Shoot Pro. We're already reaching out to some guys from the Big Ten tournament. I know Jake and I have been reaching out to that are very interested. But they're very interested because it's a shoot. And it's their world, but there's also that other element in there. Don't forget what I said about Catch 101 and the submission aspect. But it's just so cool what we're doing. I'm so excited about it.
Yeah, it's a resurrection of an ancient sport, thousands of years old, that people haven't seen for thousands of years. It's going to be. I can't wait. I can't wait.
What's old is new again, as they love to say.
Yeah, basically, there you go.
Back to the future.
Yeah.
I love that aspect. And Larry Z, an old friend of ours, used to call you the cigar store Indian for some reason. I don't know if I like that. Double A Arn Anderson. I don't know if I like that.
I used to drive Arn nuts. But the one thing I had that was lost by everybody else when we got around the mid-1980s, the wrestling business was changing. The fan base was changing. Like I said, you had these guys like Sweltzer, and then with the cheat sheets telling everybody that's pre-planned and blah, blah, blah. And so people started getting into it differently, but they didn't really hate you. The thing that I was able to keep going that drove Arn nuts and other guys was I had the psychology from all the old timers, from Bruno and Strongbow and Monsoon and Skolin and all. But in a nutshell, even when people were changing their outlook of what pro wrestling was, when I walked out, the whole arena would start chanting, "Larry sucks, Larry sucks." And I could stand in the ring for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and not stand there, but I'd jump out and yell at somebody and jump in. Or I'd jump to the announcer table and do something and jump back in and start, and then jump out and people, "Larry sucks." And for me and Arn team, the enforcers, it was over. I mean, Arn's great. He was great. And it was over, but I used to do this. But the crowd was going nuts with "Larry sucks," because what I did to the fans was, no matter what they thought of wrestling, they believed that in real life, I was an asshole. They believed I was a real asshole in real life. And Arn used to, someone named it stalling, but the fans were going nuts, chanting "Larry sucks." So why start wrestling and take their good time away? When they started coming down, I'd start wrestling. And Arn used to yell at me. He'd say, "Larry, do something." And I'd say, "Arn, but the chanting "Larry sucks, listen to him. You got 15,000 people chanting "Larry sucks." And Arn would say, "But they really mean it." I used to drive Arn crazy.
I love that. Hey, the crowd is into it. You know what I mean? Yeah.
People believed in my character. They believed I was a real a-hole.
I remember this is like 20 years ago, but in Ring of Honor, Steve Corino was one of the big stars for them for a while, but he was trying to get over like everybody who wrestled, they didn't really get booed. Nobody had heat. So he said like he was going to Larry Zbyszko it. He was going to stall. He was going to,
Yeah.
take, and he's like, he was the biggest heel in the company because he was just doing the stuff that they didn't want to see stall. They want to see wrestling, move, keep moving, keep doing moves. He's like, nope, I'm going to Zbyszko it. I'm going to lay back. I'm going to take it easy. So I thought that was great. I was like, wow, he mastered the art of Zbyszko. Yeah.
Thank God. But I never even thought about it. I mean, stalling was never a thing and never entered my mind. But the crowd was going nuts. So let them go nuts. They wanted to. Why would I stop it? When it came down, then I'd start doing something. But, I gave the fans what they wanted. And again, it worked because they believed I was a real a-hole.
I wanted to ask Larry about a guy in AWA that Hannibal's got on for a 2-part interview series that also was an asshole. And I was shocked that he never became more of a star. Remember Johnny Stewart?
Johnny
Jon Stewart in AWA? Do you remember him, Poz?
No, I actually don't really remember him. Yeah.
I really don't.
Man. He was kind of like the cocky Ric Flair type. He had the robes, but he was young and he was real arrogant, kind of like MJF now. He had that wealthy New England gimmick when his parents were legitimately wealthy, and he was grabby. Yeah, I'm surprised you don't remember him, Larry, because I listened to his interview on Hannibal, and I said, man, I remember this guy from AWA.
The weird thing about my career was I was in the AWA once, and then I was out back with the NWA or WWE or Georgia. So I kept switching, turning, and then before WCW started, I was back with the AWA. So I was in and out a couple of times, and I don't remember who was in when I wasn't there. I was supposed to wrestle Lawler when Lawler was there with the belt. But then on my way up, as I was going to go, Lawler and Vern got in an argument, so they split up. So that never happened. So, I mean, things were weird. And even television-wise, for 25 years, I never got a chance to see any WWE stuff. I missed the whole career of Stone Cold and The Rock and seeing, because every night I was in a town putting on a show for WCW, so we never got a chance to watch it, especially in the days before all the cable and recordings and all that stuff, But yeah, I mean, some of these guys, I don't remember this guy you mentioned, but he might have been in when I wasn't there or in between.
Well, it's funny because he really talks about you as like a mentor of his in this interview he did with Hannibal, with Jack Kilby. Yeah, that's why I mentioned him too, because he was the asshole. He was the quintessential heel, and I always thought he was a really good heel. Larry was the best heel, and this guy was kind of like a junior, kind of like a protege of yours in the AWA times, but he was really young. And I'm surprised you don't remember this guy.
Yeah, the name don't ring a bell, but I've heard so many. Maybe if I saw him or something, but I really don't remember offhand.
Yeah, I'll send you guys the interview, and it might jog your memory.
Jog the brain, the senior moment.
Yeah, I'll have those. It's funny because with Shoot Pro, we're talking pro wrestling, and what a lot of fans don't understand, and I want to kind of stress again, and I've always said this, and Art Davie, the creator of UFC, has said this with me in interviews I've done with him. To me, the UFC is just another pro wrestling promotion because it evolved out of Shuto and Pancrase and Rings in Japan, all the pro wrestling. And it in the early days, I mean, look who were the stars in UFC. And I talked to Frank Shamrock about that in our sit-down interview, and that's why this is Shoot Pro Wrestling. But one aspect I have to mention about Shoot Pro that's personal with me is that you don't have the punching and kicking. And I've said for a long time that the punching on the ground in MMA causes a lot of CTE and
Concussions.
Concussions. Yeah, I'm working with a production company now on a documentary, and was on the phone for a couple hours over the weekend with Angela Baroni, wife of my dear friend Phil Baroni, who I trained with and managed in his fight career. And he's in a Mexican prison right now. And his situation, he was a bit of a patsy in that situation, as I've said, but he wouldn't have been in that situation if he'd had all his faculties. Yeah. And of course, my dear friend and former broadcast partner, Stefan Bonner, passing, I attribute a lot of that to the CTE and TBI. And that's not talking out of school, because he would tell you himself he was part of a brain study with UNLV. So this, to me, is fantastic as we build and grow it and we get more money into it, because it gives wrestlers, grapplers, an opportunity to compete and make money and not destroy their brain.
Oh yeah, and that's part of the art of it, because punching and kicking kind of makes real wrestling look sloppy. You might get a lucky punch here and there, you might get a low blow kick in, but it's punching and kick. I mean, a true submission, hot shot wrestler is going to beat anybody. Forget the punching and kicking. In the UCF, they spend a third of their time with the boxing. Then they spend a third of their time with the kicking. But a submission wrestler spends 100% of his time on how to break your arm, how to pop your shoulder out, how to put you to sleep. In the days of the old Romans, some guys who went to sleep never woke up.
Yeah,
but it's a pure sport. No sloppy punching, kicking. I mean, it's a pure art and science. So I think once people see it and realize what it is and go, oh my God, and then stars are going to make themselves before your very eyes. Because we really don't know who the best of the best from the world is. They could be from Japan, Russia, Mexico, Canada, Europe, United States, but we're going to find out because stars are going to make themselves. So this is the exciting part to me.
Definitely. And, to the fans that are going to say the punching and kicking, the knockouts are exciting to me, remember, we force the action with this pinfall. So it's nonstop action. We are designed to be fan-friendly and exciting for the fans without destroying people's lives and their brains.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And once people realize what it is, they're not even going to think about punching and kicking, because they're going to realize, God, look how he's got his arm hooked. Oh, my God, his elbow just popped out. I mean, it's a true art and science sport. I can't wait to do this, because I know people haven't seen this since the beginning of humanity, since the last ice age.
And Shoot Pro's lucky they have one of the greatest commentators of all time, the living legend, Larry Zbyszko.
Thank you. Yeah, I can't.
Me and my buddies, we say it to this day. We always man, everyone always talks about this guy's, Bobby Heenan is a great commentator. We always say Larry Zbyszko in WCW. That's where it's at. He was the best.
Yeah, thank you very much, John.
And don't forget TNA, as well. And going back to TNA, and we're always trying to marry professional wrestling and MMA being fruits of the same, branches of the same tree. I know when Larry was in TNA, they brought Tito Ortiz in. And I'll just tell a quick story relating to that. I was a prime marketing consultant with 3 Group for Bellator and Spike TV. and I was managing Stephan Bonner at the time. So I put together the Stephan Bonner Tito Ortiz fight, and we used that pro wrestling flavor there. We had Justin McCauley sitting next to Stephan in the crowd with the mask on. It was a former coach and training partner of Tito, and then we brought him in the cage, and Bonner was such a master. Bonner actually came up with that idea, and we didn't even have to smarten Tito up. Tito just went off when the mask came off, and Justin McCauley. People have to check that out. But people have always been trying to figure out like how to marry the two. Because like I said, these MMA promotions are really just extensions of Shoot Pro Wrestling. And I think we have finally found the absolute best way to do that with Shoot Pro Wrestling. And want to make sure to urge folks to check out shootprowrestling.com, where you can see our Colorado shows, our 3 shows from Denver. You can see our South Dakota in the cage. And soon we'll be slowly launching our new 6-episode season.
The one in Vegas was great because at the beginning, it was a little too dark. They had to make some adjustments, and the ones that, in Vegas, they were done great. So I can't wait. I can't wait to get this going. I know the fans are going to love it. I mean, people are going to look at it 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then go, oh my God, this guy's not going to, this is real. I mean, they're going to be in shock and then impressed and then be engulfed.
I love that. And it's great. We get 2 movie recommendations, Queen of the Ring from the King, and then for you, The Unbreakable Bunch.
So we get
2 movie recommendations on this show.
Man, I got to see Unbreakable Bunch. Where's the best guys? What's the best platform to view it?
Amazon Prime. That's the way I did it. I just literally 2 seconds, look it up, boom, hit one button, and you're watching it. Yeah, that's what I always do, Amazon Prime.
Yeah, it was well done. I mean, it's not a wrestling movie. It's a science fiction action adventure. It's family friendly, So I mean, it's really a cool movie. It's not like Batman 20 and Indiana Jones 10 and all these remakes. It's something unique, and again, family friendly. The family can watch. It's not a wrestling movie, so you don't know what's coming at you. And I think they did a great job with it.
And you kind of steal the show in there. I got to be honest. And I mentioned this to Luther Biggs. I mentioned this to Ray Lloyd. I said, Larry's like a natural actor out there. I was like, man, he steals the show. They said you were like an old time, like one of those old, like Jack Nicholson types, or, those old school actors.
The director said I'm the new Jon Voight.
Yeah, Jon Voight. Exactly. Yes. Yeah, like an old school actor. It's so natural. I guess from wrestling, right? You're like just naturally able to just pull that off.
I guess. I mean, I hate to say this, but it was kind of easy because I basically played, my character was the legend. So it was kind of easy to play a lot of myself.
So in the Unbreakable Bunch movie, all of the wrestlers aren't playing themselves. They're actually playing different characters.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, Glacier's not Glacier, Luther's not Luther.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Ming's in there.
Luther does kind of play a character that he did play once once upon a time, kind of loosely based off of that character. Yeah, loosely, but yeah. But basically, they're new characters. So it's completely different than their wrestling characters.
Yeah,
Ernest Cat Miller.
Luther's down here in Florida too. He like I say, I knew him well in South Carolina, and he's down here in Florida now too. Everybody's moving down here. Poz, you and the family looking to maybe relocate to the Sunshine State?
Hey, if I can get my wife to do it, I would do it. I love Orlando. My buddy and his wife and their daughter live in Orlando. I would move to Orlando in a heartbeat.
It's hard to